My name's Eric Kreifelt. I'm a principal analyst with Telegeography. We're a market research firm. We cover the global network the global market for international network services. My role today is to take you through another panel discussion on kind of focusing on SDN and automation, and it's going to be a nice couple perspectives from a Tier 1 operator with Verizon, as well as a core network supplier in Infinera. And I guess I'll just ask my panelists to go ahead and come out. We have Hwajung Han with Verizon, and Christian Uremovich with Infinera. Christian is Director of Solution Marketing, and Hwajung is Director of SDN Technology, Architecture, and Planning. Hey, come have a seat.
Hi.
So we've heard a lot of different perspectives on SD-WAN and NFV, obviously, and the one we want to try and give you today is a realistic one from obviously the perspectives of the two panelists that we have. And but just to get things started, probably be worthwhile to just have you introduce yourselves and your kind of role at the company and perspective on the topic. And Christian, why don't we start with you?
All right, Christian Uremovich is my name. Work with Infinera, a leading vendor in the optical transport domain, as a director in the solution marketing.
Hi, my name is Hwajung Han. I'm from Verizon. I'm a director of SDN Technology, Architecture, and Planning.
Okay. All right, and I've already introduced myself, so we'll go ahead and get started. I guess just to kind of frame the topic and the perspectives that we're bringing to you today in this session, I'll just ask, what does SDN mean to you? What does it mean to what you're trying to accomplish at your organization? HJ, let's start with you.
Okay, so textbook or standard definition of SDN is the separation of control plane, data plane, and logically centralizing the control plane function. But when we put architecture in the right place, what that means to us is SDN enables the programmability of the network, and it also enables the horizontal integration of the network. Today's network is very vertically integrated, from the OSS system, EMS, and device. It's very tightly vertically tight, and also it creates tightly integrated within the domain. So it creates the vertical silos and domain silos, but SDN enables the horizontal integration of the network.
Okay.
Yeah, for us, SDN is also a very important technology. It provides a unified management in the multi-vendor network, and it also provides centralized control in the networks today. So we believe also that SDN is very important as we move on, even on the optical domain side, where things are getting more and more dynamic and flexible. So if you think about 10 years ago, we provided 10 gig connectivity that was very static and stayed there forever. And today we have flexible interfaces, and we can switch wavelengths, we can switch services within the wavelengths, and we can change the wavelength speeds, we can change modulations and gigabaud. So these dynamics are getting there, and we need to control these networks more dynamically and flexibly. So SDN is really enabling that kind of architecture and model. And then also, as we embrace disaggregated networks, having a multi-vendor environment in today's networks is really common. And in order to operate such a multi-vendor environment, SDN is really helping to program, as Hwajung has confirmed and said as well.
So, given that perspective and definition of SDN, what does it enable you to do? What's the benefit of things like automation and programmability that come with SDN?
So the programmability actually gives us it gives us with that right architecture in place, end-to-end automation, also the service innovation.
Yeah. And another aspect of SDN is really this model-driven networks, where actually the network elements are getting these models implemented so that the automation can be more effective. Today, if you want to talk to the network, you have to talk with different languages to different network elements and components, and this requires adoption on the SDN side a lot of times. So. And that becomes really a roadblock in the meantime. So it's a comprehensive and complicated job to write adaptions all the time. Every time a new network element is introduced, it just takes too much time. Having an ecosystem where you comply with the models so that every network element supports models that are standardized in the industry, that will help automation significantly. So we are really, embracing this as well and enabling open models in our solutions so that operators like Verizon can apply automation significantly faster and much more effective.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very important in a way that that's where the automation, SDN-driven automation is very different than traditional, automation, like, scripting. It's very different. Like he mentioned about data model. If we have a right data model in place, that's where open API becomes meaningful. And we need a very different automation tools and or this application that supports that data model driven, open API driven solutions, which is very, very different. I kind of mentioned that putting a right architecture, when you're separating control plane from data plane, it doesn't mean that, like today I think is a lot of vendors, what they do is like, oh, you want separation in the control plane separation from data plane. What they initially did is like they take the existing software from the hardware and take that out and putting into a cloud or a server platform environment. That actually doesn't work at all because you have to design you need to have a right data model in place, and you open up that interface so that you can actually properly separate those, and then you can interface with each other.
Very good. So there's a lot of concepts there. I guess what's the before we even get into the challenges of migrating to this environment, what's the status of where we're at now with achieving this kind of environment, this kind of design environment?
Yeah, so we have started to develop products that support this open environment. This is also very much driven by the content providers, by the ICPs a lot. They have started with it, and we have provided solutions to them. But now the carriers also are adopting this technology in their networks, which has shown been very effective. And the status is that the vendors today are capable and able to provide these data models in the networks. And if you think about all the new products that we, for example, develop, I can't speak for other vendors, that they will support these data models in their solutions. So but we are still evolving, these data models have gaps here and there. So this is where we are enhancing and also working in those open initiatives. We participate actively there to drive and identify the gaps and to improve these data models so that the automation can be much more efficient.
And what's the supplier's motivation for pursuing that or overcoming maybe competitive barriers to having a more closed environment? Frankly, what's the motivation?
Yeah, it's really about faster innovation. We have seen that our first systems was 2014 that we developed with open APIs, and we have seen that our operators, or let's say our customers, have developed their own applications that can run the networks. So it really enables the operator to program the network, to program the systems in order to be much more agile. So the innovation is significantly faster. And that's a key value of this open data-driven models.
Yeah, I think it's a win-win for both, actually. So, provider perspective, we can innovate a lot of, network and services, and vendors can focusing on the technology they are good at, like, optical vendors, photonic layers that they can innovate, without having any tightly coupling of the, device services. So the moment that you take those out, they can be very, very focusing on the innovation of their technology.
That's right. That's right. Thank you.
And what's how would you characterize the status of where Verizon's at in achieving some of these things?
So we're taking 3 steps. First, I think, understanding really technology and architecture, what SDN is about, is very important. Based on those, so SDN is not really evolution, it's a revolution. You have to really change everything from the tools you're using and architecture of the network. Everything is very different, so you have to change everything. So what we have been doing, and it's been successful, was based on the right architecture solution, based on the target architecture we used the greenfield we created actually native SDN architecture-driven solution. So we have a network that purely SDN, using the SDN technology, and we're deploying that solution. And we are using that as an anchor network and reference network to showcase, proving out the innovation and all different, operational efficiencies and all the benefits that we are talking about is there, just showcase. And we have this big network. I think Vicky at her keynote mentioned about we have this intelligent edge network. We are on the 10-year journey of modernizing our network. So with that network transformation effort for 10 years, we are actually putting right requirements out there to the vendor solutions, and we are kind of taking an entrance step using more traditional driven network solution to actually to get to our end state architecture. So we're putting a lot of tools and also abstraction in place, service abstraction and network abstraction in place to moving that network into the right direction. And then also third one is, what about all the legacy, 100 years old, legacy network and, all these TDM circuits that we need to deal with. So we have a plan actually working with partner with the Infinera, having a right, decom and migration plan in place so that we can move, all this legacy network into, taking steps to get to our target architecture solution.
Okay. Yeah, if I may add, so that's very interesting. 3 years ago, I wouldn't think of a use case. TDM migration would be an SDN tool, but we are deploying now an SDN orchestrated automation for the migration of those networks. So what we do here is basically we help operators to migrate from this legacy equipment, legacy services, towards the newer services. And there are multiple steps here required. So, and this automation is very important. It's really triggered by 5G, which is a disruptive technology introduction. And so you need to make space in your environment, in your network, to introduce newer, more capable, more scalable, more cost-efficient network elements in order to support the 5G revolution. And this is where we are really migrating, the services into the next generation platforms and helping operators to do that in a more automated way and in more effective way. So, there are a lot of things we can talk about this, but I pause here. And
sure, yeah.
And I want to mention one thing. So whatever we do is we have to do it at scale. It's like scale is like really big. So automation is like really a key thing. And using the right tool for that automation is very important for us.
And I want to explore that more, particularly the migration path to get to where we want to be. But before I do, I want to give the audience an opportunity. You have a great opportunity here to really inform perspectives on this on this migration and this transformation. Does anybody have any questions for the panelists?
Who needs migration in the network? Who wants to migrate networks?
Saad Swat, Mobile Technology Operation. I have two questions. The first one is the use cases is not up to the expectation at the current time. When do you expect to meet the operator expectation, the time frame? The other question, is there a standard for automation on SDN? Because I can see each vendor is working on his own way. So we might face compatibility issues in future or something where things cannot work together all? Is it standardized?
Well, you want to take the second question first?
Yeah. The second question would be good, because the first I didn't fully understand, to be honest. And the standardization here is that the industry has recognized the problem to have a multi-vendor environment that, the data models the multi-vendors have are not similar, so they're not unified. You can't speak to the network elements in a unified way today. There is a compatibility issues. What we have done in the past is enabled controllers, but this didn't scale as well. So I think that the young models are right now the right path to introduce like open config and open router models on the transport networks. That will really help the standardization. Now, and that's really important. So once you have the ability to talk to your equipment in a unified way and to collect and interpret data from the network in a unified way so that the interpretation is consistent, then you can really start with the comprehensive automation that is more standardized. So clearly, these data models, this is the key requirement for really good, effective automation.
Yeah, I think driving common and standard data model is very important, and all the carriers and operators need to actually come together and drive a lot of those. But I think we have to take steps, right? We cannot boil the ocean at the same time. So what we are doing is like where there is a common model available, open config or ITF, BBF, MEF, all good areas, but not everybody has a comprehensive solution. So it's operators, I think, job to pick the right data model and common model, and also some of them are very specific to operator environment, but it is our job to actually define those and publish it so that vendor can comply with it. You need to take that step. And what we are doing at Verizon is we understand that not everybody actually compliant with the common and standard model support. So we take the native, it's okay to have a native model as long as they open their APIs. Then we do created a layer does the abstraction for the network. But at the same time, we can define the service layer. MEF does a good job on defining the service data model. If we can even adapt that one first, at least we can simplify our northbound interface and northbound driven automation a lot quicker and faster. And while network vendors are catching up with their data model support. That's the step that we are taking.
Very good. Thank you. What about the first question?
Yeah, so I think the first question in a nutshell is how long do you think this is going to take?
I think it's happening now.
It's happening.
But you have to really push really hard. I mean, my day-to-day job is working with the vendor. Actually, vendor willing to work with us to support open, data model, open APIs. So you have to take step, but you have to push it really hard. But for us, it's happening now.
Yeah, it's happening now. I agree. And we also identify also gaps in these data models as we move on. So I think it's very, very important that you focus on your use cases, on the outcomes that you want to achieve, and then see if these data models will provide you the help there. And as we move on, we are working in these forums and open initiatives and drive requirements there. So to help to complete this journey. So it's really a journey that we need to take. It's a stepwise approach. It takes time, but we are on the path.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And before we wrap up, can we elaborate on some of those challenges? And I know at the event we sort of inherently talk about these things in an idealized kind of way, which is good, but the reality is of transforming a network to get there is very very challenging. Can you share any insights into that?
Yeah, one aspect is really what we have seen is when we discovered the network and the services today, we found out that the operators have seen actually, they didn't actually see in the first glance what the network and the services that are completely running in the legacy network. The legacy tools didn't provide enough information, and it's not visualized. It's really, really challenging and complicated to plan the migration and to receive the data from the network. What is the status quo in real time in the network right now? And this is where SDN is really helping us. So we have seen that we can discover the whole network and discover all the services that are running on this network. And now we can visualize this data. We can import into the database. We can visualize the data in multiple ways. And this visualization alone is helping the operators to plan the migration significantly more efficient.
Yeah, I think one of the important things that people to remember is that traditional solution or tools or devices are actually designed and architected to have a human and machine interface in mind. That's what CLI is for. All this CLI abstraction is for the human interface, but we are in the era of machine-to-machine interface-driven automation. So fundamental, even the network architecture or device architecture, everything has to be changed to have the machine-to-machine communication in mind. What that means, you have to have a right data model in place, and that drives the open APIs, and that drives the different, tools implementation. So it's a very, very fundamental changes has to happen. That's actually the challenge that we're not going there soon enough, so that we can actually experience the full benefit of the automation.
Okay. Well, we're out of time, but maybe we can cheat a little bit. If anybody has a question, we could probably slip one more in.
That was a fast 20 minutes.
Yep, really fast one. No. Okay. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? I think we.
Yeah, if you want to have a more deeper discussion, we have a booth here at Infinera here at the show. Come and visit us. We can go into more details. We can also demo you a few things that we are doing right now in these aspects. So, encourage you to come over and to speak with us.
Yeah, if anyone wants to work with us on developing a common data model, come and talk to me.
And we still have some time at the event, so we'll look for them here if you have any more questions. And in the meantime, please join me in thanking our panelists for a really informative discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.